Welcome to Political Paradigm. I'm Terry Ikumi. Now, there's so much going on around in the country, from protests to strike action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, the Nigeria Labour Congress threatening to join in that strike, and even what seems like a degeneration into a one-party state with the random defections. But let's not lose focus on the need to get our leadership system back on track by fixing our electoral space. It's a little over a year to the 2027 general election, and the Electoral Act amendment bill has not been passed. Only last week, the Senate suspended further deliberation on the proposed amendments to the 2022 Electoral Act after a tense debate exposed sharp divisions among lawmakers over the extent and clarity of the proposed reforms. The budget itself is yet to be presented. It will be prioritized once it is done in the coming weeks. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill, if not passed in good time, may not receive presidential assent, just like the first attempt by the 9th National Assembly, which was rejected by President Buhari, now of blessed memories. Well, the new INEC chairman would also need that new document, enough time to study it. Anyway, let's get talking on electoral reforms in Nigeria. And I'm joined virtually by the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mazi Afam Osigwe. Welcome to Political Paradigm, Mr. President.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor to have you here. I'd like to begin by your thoughts on the new INEC chairman. You know, I ask this because I know that you and other civil society organizations have clamored and are proposing that the INEC chairman should be appointed not by the president. But we do have an INEC chairman in place now. What are your thoughts on Professor Joash Amopitan?
Well, on a personal note, I know Professor Joash Amopitan, and I know him as a lecturer. I knew him as a lecturer at the University of Jos, and as a professional colleague, and as a senior advocate of Nigeria. And I know that a lot of expectation, a lot is expected from him, and I know he brings to the job years of experience and professionalism. And it is our hope that he's going to discharge the responsibilities which have been bestowed on him creditably very well, and he's going to show up the image of INEC, and he's going to introduce a lot of changes that will make for credible elections, one where technology will be used to ensure the transparency of the process, and will do things that enhance confidence in the electoral process. So a lot more is desired of him, and I use this opportunity to congratulate him on his appointment and to say that the legal profession, for once, is having one of his own made a chairman of the Electoral Commission, and it is an expectation that he will elevate that office by bringing the best of professional competence to bear, to also show that lawyers can make a difference, and that his years of being a senior advocate will count for something in his present appointment.
Well, interestingly, it is his appointment has not received any negative reaction. You know, the thing about Nigeria is that once you present yourself for public office, a lot of negative reactions begin to trail it. People begin to dig into your history and bring up some past that you probably wouldn't want dug up. But then again, I want to ask you, because I know that before the screening process, before the Senate, there were calls from civil society organizations for a thorough process and a transparent one. Is that what you saw during the screening of the Prof? If you could also tilt your camera down a bit, please, so that we could get a better picture of you. Thank you very much.
Now, I would want to say this. I sometimes wish that the confirmation hearings in the National Assembly would be much better than it is at the moment, even where there is not much negative things to be said about a person. Sometimes such a hearing is intended, to my mind, to have the person's views on so many issues. But personally, and as an association, we have nothing against Professor Joash Amopitan. He has had an unblemished record as an administrator, as dean in the Faculty of Law, University of Jos, and his private life as a legal practitioner, and have nothing negative to say against it. And indeed, we had no reason to doubt that the appointment was the right one, and had no reason to doubt his competence, had no reason to doubt that he brings the integrity required for an occupant of that office. I had no reason to suspect that he may be partisan in the discharge of his responsibilities. But sometimes I wish that a public hearing should be much more detailed and much more open testing different aspects of the person's life and the person's views about the office the person seeks to occupy, and also providing an opportunity to know the kind of reforms expected of that person. That would also provide a barometer for testing the person and holding them accountable about what they said, their vision about what they intend to do, and what they actually do when they occupy such offices. But all in all,
please land on your thoughts, please.
So all in all, we have nothing against it, and we allow the appointment, and we only wish him the very best in the discharge of his constitutional responsibilities.
I was going to say that it's very nice to have the NBA as a body standing so openly on electoral reforms. And we will talk about some of the submissions you've made before Parliament. But let me ask you this question as we speak about the institution, INEC. I know that during the screening, Senator Oshomole had raised questions about why we continue to use people in the academia. So let me also ask you this question as to the pattern of appointing heads of the commission. We've seen professors over time being appointed as heads of the commission, and now people in the academia are being used for returning officers in elections. What would we say to this? I think the idea for many people is that we must assess the impact of using people in the academia for our elections. What would you say to that?
Well, I want to say that in making appointments, really, we shouldn't restrict it to the academia. We should ensure that credible Nigerians, irrespective of where they may be found, in any walk of life, should be appointed. And the appointment should be driven by the ability to deliver on the job, the ability to be neutral and deliver on a credible election. The members of the academia have had more than a lion's share of such appointments. Maybe this is fueled by the thinking that people in the ivory tower are less likely to be involved in politics, are less likely to be fair-minded, and are more likely to do that which is expected of the occupiers of such offices. Experience may not always have justified this thinking, if this is indeed the thinking behind having professors appointed as chair of INEC. But for me, the most important thing is, whether you're from the academia or not, for you to do that which is expected of the office and deliver on a free and fair election, a very transparent election, an election where INEC is able to show that it always substantially complied with the provisions of the law, and that documents emanating from INEC pass the highest level of credibility that will be and in line with international best practices, and that elections conducted by the INEC will be such that both the loser and the winner will get away believing that the process has been fair, and that whoever was declared winner indeed deserved to win, and whoever lost deserved to lose. And that documents coming out of INEC in electoral disputes also have integrity. And all in all, that we abide by the highest standards of constitutionality in the conduct of the election. That to me should count. You don't have to be from the academy to be able to do it. You just need to be a good person, a person who have respect for the rule of law, and who is interested in doing the right thing to be able to do this.
As we look toward the Herculean task ahead of the INEC chairman, especially considering that he would be inheriting this burden of reputational deficit and damage from the 2023 general elections, as rightly put by former Commissioner Mustapha Lekki, whom I'll be speaking with later. How much of a task do you think this would be for the Commission?
The major task the Commission has to overcome or carry is convincing Nigeria that INEC can be trusted to deliver on a credible election. And despite whatever may be the outcome of these electoral disputations or contestations in our courts, people don't believe that some of the outcomes actually reflect the will of the people. INEC must do everything to assure the people that the outcome of the electoral process reflects the will of the people, that the people must be assured that the court have not usurped the powers of the electorate to determine their leaders, but have handed them over to the courts, that we have not judicialized the electoral process, that the electoral process does not merely stamp the will of the strong, who are able to have their way, while the minority will cry and be called sore losers. And that when people challenge people to go to court, that they really mean that in the sense of, I rightly won, not go to court and you can't do anything about it and the courts can't help you, because you have a Herculean task proving that your complaint is legitimate or that you may have won the election. So INEC has to fight the perception, which is very negative, about his ability to deliver on a fair election. And that is one task I don't envy Professor Joshua Mopiton. But if he brings reputation to bear and his wealth of experience, he may well be that INEC chairman in recent times who is able to turn around the fortunes of the people, of INEC rather, and the people will have a greater confidence in the electoral process. And this will depend on some of the reforms he'll be able to drive. This will also depend on his ability to conduct that election. The Nigerians will go away saying, indeed, this is a chairman we were right in trusting and not opposing his appointment or having much negative things to say about him, because we know that he understands the burden that INEC bears at the moment and is not willing to for INEC to continue to carry that burden, and for those who occupy the offices to just be said as well, what did you expect? So he has to first work on the perception, and he can only do this by ensuring that the elections conducted under his watch meet the best international standards and have credibility, and that they free where not easily manipulated.
Right, I think another thing that he needs, perhaps the most important document he needs, is the Electoral Act amendment bill that is currently before Parliament. I don't know about you, but there are just about quite a number of perceptions now that the National Assembly is really slow in passing this. Only last week, deliberations on it were stepped down by the Senate. It was clear that, they needed clarity on certain issues, not unexpected. But what do you think about the pace of this bill before Parliament?
Well, I think the pace of the amendment process is slow, but it's also good that whatever the National Assembly needed clarifications on, that they're able to do them. Because what is need in rushing to pass a bill into law only for us to come back to ask for further amendments? And I think if the essence of an amendment process is to cure the defects, observe lapses in an extant law, then we should be able to make a very good job of it so that we don't keep going back to amend the law. But I also share the view that the current Electoral Act set out to cure that, but just maybe judicial interpretations of some of the provisions have either been contradictory or have worked to defeat the objectives or the thinking of those who passed the law. And these are some of the problems. So even while you may make the amendments, we still have to wait for judicial pronouncements on them. And sometimes it is some of these judicial interpretations that actually dash the expectations of the lawmakers in putting in place some of the amendments. I mean, if you talk about Section 137 of the Electoral Act, about what you need to prove when you produce document and an electoral process and how the court has gone about interpreting it, the use of IREV, the use of technology, you also see that the legislature actually needs to do wider consultation to ensure that they put in place a that will not yield itself to ambiguous judicial interpretations. But we need to move fast to ensure that the Electoral Act is passed and is in place to regulate the next election, which is far approaching. 2027 is around the corner. And if we are going by the recent proposals being made, if the constitutional amendment passes, there's a possibility of the election being conducted by the end of next year. And it's already October. So we should have a law, an amended process act in place at least 1 year before the commencement of the electoral process and 6 months before the commencement of campaigns and primaries by political parties to choose their candidates for the election.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the proposals the NBA has made now. I know that the NBA is very big on making sure that the bimodal voter accreditation system and the electronic transmission results via the IREV, that's the INEC result viewing portal, makes it into this bill to make it compulsory. Talk to us about that.
Well, if you look at the continuous voter registration exercise, sometimes it is supposed to be a continuous thing. But for some reason, INEC has not always made it a continuous registration thing. And we really need to look at a voters register to ensure that we have a process of weeding out those who are dead and also have a process of weeding out double registration. And it is a continuous registration exercise and should not be a very difficult thing for people to do. And then also the delimitation of constituencies. INEC hasn't quite carried out this function very well. You need to review the number of registrants and also ensure that polling units are brought closer to people in places where the populations have grown and that ease of people to be able to move about to vote on the day of election is addressed. Nothing justifies the continued restriction of movement on election day. And if people are made to go long distances to vote on election day, it could be a disincentive to people's ability to vote. If my voting center is far from where I live and I can't drive to that place, and it could dissuade people from going to vote if they have to go to such lengths, walking to go and vote. So INEC should think more about bringing polling units closer to where people live and making it easy for people to live. And nothing actually means that elections will keep people at home. I've said that before. And then if you also talk about use of technology, all over the world, technology is being used to make the electoral process smoother and have more integrity. I was part of a team sent by Yaga Africa to monitor observe the Ghanaian election in December of last year. And we saw how the Ghanaians deployed technology to ensure that the electoral process was fair and people could in real time follow what was happening. And if you recall in that election, long before the final vote tally was in, the first runner-up in that election conceded defeat and congratulated the other person. He could do that because the process had integrity, and with the use of technology and the returns from his representatives in the polling units all across the regions in Ghana and the country, they were able to have had their own private vote tally, which showed that indeed the president, Mahama, had won the election or would ultimately win the election. We want to see INEC put such a thing in place where both the voting process and the collation, tabulation, and then subsequently the collation process are done in such a transparent manner that it will be very difficult for any person to cast aspersion on the integrity of the process and thereby reduce the number of cases that ultimately go to court. This whole idea of disrupting the judicial life of a nation, yanking judges from one state to post them to another place to hear election petitions, to spend 6 months doing this, it don't make sense, and we can't continue having this. Elections should be such that when it is over, very few, if at all, of them get to the courts. But what do we have? We have an avalanche of cases all over the place. And then people sometimes produce results showing different things from the same body that has organized the election. We can't continue to do that. And if we cannot deploy technology to ensure that the process works well, that people have confidence and have real-time information about the status and standing of the votes and standing of the candidates in the election, then we'll be burying our head in the sand and be living in an age where very few countries now living in the conduct of the election. And candidates will always exploit that to challenge the outcome of the election, to cast aspersion on the integrity of the electoral umpire because it makes them feel good. It is a way of convincing their supporters that, oh, we didn't lose, they stole the vote. And the cycle goes on, and the cost, and then the image of the nation and the standing in the Committee of Nations. We must put in place an electoral process that is driven by technology that works for every person, and that way, when people also come to power, they will have legitimacy. People will really believe that they got there because they are the people that won the vote. But if the process is flawed, it will always be a reason to delegitimize whoever comes, who emerges a winner, is declared to have emerged a winner.
Let's talk about the retention of the 14-day window of filing pre-election matters to ensure swift resolution of disputes. And also you could talk about the proposal that seeks to ensure that all these, before swearing in, the election matters are resolved. For me, we don't need 6 months to resolve electoral disputes. The less time we do them, the better. For example, presidential election, in my thinking, should be handled by the Supreme Court with all the justices sitting. And this should be concluded in a matter of weeks. And people should be able to know where they stand. You don't get sworn in and you're still going to court to challenge your declaration as a winner. It doesn't make us look good. And it is not unheard of for the occupants of these offices to deploy their office and the resources of the state to ensure that they retain their position. It shouldn't happen. By the time you're taking the oath of office for whatever office or position you have been declared winner, whatever legal contestation about your competence or your competence or the propriety of your declaration as a winner should have been settled. And we should put things in place and shorten the timeline for doing some of these things to speed up the electoral process and ease the waste of time associated with them. Then the documentary evidence that you speak about, is it to make sure that the BVAS logs and IRF screenshots compulsory this time compared to what obtained in 2023?
Well, the courts decided that in 2023 they were not compulsory. And I think there should be some consistency by a court in the interpretation of these laws and who has a burden of proof and what you need to prove. I mean, judicial decisions that suggested that you must go and physically carry the beavers into court, in my mind, did not advance the justice. They did not advance electoral credibility and ability of persons to prove. Even when you have produced reports, all manner of reasoning and judicial decision were taken to ensure that these things did not work. But we must make technology work and make technological ways of proving the content of such devices work, and the mandatory use of them in deciding who voted and who won should not be de-emphasized.
Mr. President,
there must be the rule rather than the exception, and the courts should do everything to ensure that such provisions in the law are given primacy.
Let me come in here and ask you
by watering down the efficacy of the legislative provisions in those regards.
Pardon me. So I've had this conversation with politicians as well, who have argued that the distribution of network service across Nigeria is not even. And so you cannot say that that provision should be made compulsory and should be presented as evidence in court, because network could lag in certain areas.
Well, Terry, when people want to do the wrong thing, they bring up such arguments. These same people will also be able to tell you that mobile banking goes on in their various places. But when it comes to the election, we suddenly remember that there could be epileptic network. But if I remember what INEC says that some of those things are able to upload subsequently when they get connected to network, so that they don't need constant network connection to work. I don't think that argument is a strong one. If that is a problem, then we should put in place some network backbone all over the nation to ensure that this process works. If we have identified epileptic network coverage as a problem, then let's solve that as a problem and not use that as an excuse for not deploying technology. We should be ashamed that is the argument we are making for failure to utilize technology. And people have been saying this for more than 8 years. Okay. We should have gone beyond this point.
You also made a proposal restricting candidate qualification challenges to only aspirants within the same political party. Why is this so? Shouldn't another political party who
I don't think that members of another political party should not challenge the competence of another candidate. But if you talk about it in the sense of whether they were elected through proper process, first of all, I don't think that the emergence of a candidate should be an open thing for people to challenge. I don't think it should be justiciable. If a party, by whatever way, decides to field a person, my thinking is that the court should not be involved in that process. The court should not be involved in the process of determining who is a candidate for a political party. If the political party puts you forward, that's your business. And if the voters decide to punish the political party for that, we should leave that to them and not for the courts. But if there is an issue of constitutional disqualification or qualification by a person, any person, in my thinking, and any candidate should be able to challenge that, because that goes to the issue of your competence to stand for the election. But if it is as to how you emerged as the candidate of a party, I don't think it should be a matter that the court should be burdened with, because it is the major reason why pre-election matters linger, and sometimes the courts are now accused of choosing the candidate for a political party.
Okay, so your argument is that it should be challenged. What should be challenged is the constitutional violation.
I think it's only the constitutional violation, yes, as to qualification that
and not the process of the emergence.
No, the process should not be a legally challengeable thing. We leave that for the political parties. The essence of it in the First Republic, in all the cases reported on it, is that political parties who know who they want to contest election for them, you may be the most popular person and then you do not believe in the ideals of a political party. A political party should be able to make a decision as to the proper person to put there to contest for them, and the court shouldn't be involved in any challenge as to the decision made by a political party.
Right.
It may well be argued that this may lead to dictatorship and subversion of the will of the party, but then it is politics, and political parties should be able to make value judgment as who they want to be out there flying their flag and representing them. We should reduce judicial involvement in this aspect of the electoral process.
All right. In the aspect of single-day elections, I need you to clarify or take a side on this, because I know that the Commission believes that single-day elections is the way to go. But where do you stand on those who say that this is going to be more expensive and that we may not have the resources to conduct all these elections in one day?
I think those are the arguments that this will be more expensive fails to take cognizance of the fact that if you do something in one day, it will be cheaper than doing it over a period of days. I think conducting all elections in one day will make it a whole lot easier.
But that would require a lot more personnel, wouldn't it?
Pardon?
That would require a lot more personnel, wouldn't it?
No, it's just which personnel. It's about the number of ballot papers you're giving to the voters. If it is, it will not require as much as a repeat of the same personnel for a second day. And then some of the effects of people already winning, and then having been declared winner and won, having some negative effect on the outcome of subsequent elections. All elections should hold in the same day. And all challenges should be concluded before swearing in. And we should even reconsider this idea. This is not related to your question, though, of not trusting judges from within a state to be able to determine the outcome of elections. They were trusted in the First Republic, were trusted in the Second Republic, and I don't think that taking them from all over Nigeria has improved the transparency of the process or has increased the integrity of the judiciary or the perception that right decisions are being rendered. In fact, the current system has worsened the perception of a judicial intervention in the electoral process. But then that's a digression from your question. But yes, I believe that conducting the whole election in the same day should be the way to go and will be much cheaper and much less cumbersome than disrupting the lives of the people on 2 different days simply because we are conducting elections.
All right, just before we say goodbye, I want to ask you this question with regard to special courts that many believe would address the issue of election petitions. Do you think that we need special courts just so we don't overburden?
I don't think we need special courts. We don't need special courts. We keep creating courts in Nigeria without stopping to pause to think about the financial effects of them on the people and the bureaucracy and the infrastructure we put in place. Federal High Court started as a revenue court. Today is a full-fledged court that has almost taken more jurisdiction from state high courts. National Industrial Court started as an inferior court to settle the labor disputes. Today has become a formal court with all the paraphernalia of office and structures all over Nigeria. And if our electoral process is right, we will not have much news for electoral disputes and contestations. You can't continue creating courts. There are also those who are calling for a special court for financial crimes. How many special courts can we have? How many?
Well,
the clamor to have courts for electoral offenses is an admission that we have no intention of reforming our electoral process and making it work. We have no intention of conducting free and fair elections. We want to continue the more of doing bad things, distorting the electoral process. That we have no intention of ensuring that people will believe that the outcome of the election reflects the will of the people. And then after the election cycle, what would these judges be doing? What would these courts be doing? They go to sleep and wait for another election cycle? Think about it. Because the election is not
all right,
and commercial transactions. So how do you have a special court? So it will be a seasonal court or what? To be an ad hoc court? I don't think so.
All right.
If we reform our electoral process, if election works, if votes count, and the umpire is indeed an impartial umpire that conducts election in the spirit and in the letter and spirit of the law,
yes,
nobody will need an electoral offense court or even suggest that we should have one.
All right, Mazi.
Reform the process, and the idea of having them resolve the court would be a non-existent issue.
Mazi Afam Osigwe, I'd like to thank you very much for coming to speak with me on Political Paradigm.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for the engaging and interesting conversation we've had so far.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I've been speaking with the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mazi Afam Osigwe. It's interesting to have the NBA make quite a number of submissions before Parliament. What we will do now is switch the conversation and have a conversation with a former INEC commissioner. We would like to talk about certain responsibilities that are going to be heaped on INEC following the amendment of the Electoral Act bill, and would find out whether INEC can actually handle the prosecution of electoral offenses, or do we need a special commission? If INEC can handle single-day elections, if INEC can handle early voting as well. There are quite a number of proposals before Parliament to see whether or not the Independent National Electoral Commission can take up this new responsibility. Also bearing in mind that we have a new INEC chairman. And I'm now joined virtually by former INEC National Commissioner, Professor Mustapha Lekki. Dr. Mustapha Lekki, welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you're not surprised by the confirmation of Professor Joash Amutan. You had some good things to say about him, and you had said that you hoped that the process would go far. So let me ask you, what did you think about the Senate screening process of Professor Joash Amutan?
Thank you very much. I'm happy to see that this went very smoothly and predictably. And that's what I said the last time I was on your television. I mean, I didn't expect any hitch, and it was very smooth. And so I'm happy to see that happening. All that we have heard and read about him so far has been quite sterling. So I think INEC is getting a very formidable Nigerian individual to pilot this affair over the next immediate future. It's a good thing for INEC.
All right, let me extend the same question to you, which I threw to the NBA president. I've just come off a conversation with the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, who believes that the academia has had its share of INEC, its leadership, returning officers and all. But we have this pattern of appointing professors to head the commission and then appointing people from the academia, vice chancellors and all, as returning officers. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a great point. And my experience before I joined INEC and while I was there is that the academia, particularly comes to the issue of results management, which is collation and declaration of result, has been less than sterling. There's been a series of avoidable disappointment. And I think this issue of using the professor, which started mostly during the time of Jega and through the immediate past INEC chairman, it's about time that they are professors, so maybe they were playing to their constituencies. So probably that's why. I don't want to say it's a form of nepotism in quotes, but I think it's about time that we take a look. There are alternative ways and which can probably do far better. That's always been my position. I have nothing against the universities, but the experience has been quite less than sterling, when it comes to the performance of these professors from the universities who are doing, collation and declaration of results at various stages of the electoral process, be it at the ward or at the state level or at the national level. Yeah, we need to take a second look at it. And it's one of the recommendations I've already been making, which I also want to make here, that INEC needs to look inward, starting maybe with off-season selection. No off-season election should use the university professor. The reason why I say off-season elections is because INEC has enough staff that can man those the off-season selections. So they can use their staff who are under their control and who are also quite vast, experienced, understand the laws, the rules and regulations, and the punishment inherent in case of any misdeed. So I think INEC should just start now, and we'll have a few off-season elections coming through, very soon. Anambra is right there around the corner, and we should not have the process involved. Even if it's experimental, which I really don't think, we can start from that now and see how well they perform.
All right. Dr. Lekki, let me ask you this question, because you've worked in INEC as National Commissioner. How do you react to people who question the independence of the Commission?
Well, they have every reason to question. I mean, the name suggests that the institution should be independent, and they should actually, is it really truly independent? And the issues are all over the space, in terms of the independence of INEC. So everybody has a right to do. It's also a part of an accountability issue by questioning the independent. INEC need to be accountable independently. And we need to question and hold them to. It's very important that INEC is independent. The issue, like I witnessed in the past, of trying to play to the body language of somebody who is in power, it really has no room for the work that INEC should do. So the independence questioning by people is the right thing to do. And INEC must not only be independent, it must be seen in its action and utterances to be truly independent. And so it's a cardinal issue. If INEC is independent, then the whole, electoral process is a charade. And so we need to actually hold them accountable.
But then how do we further strengthen or emphasize this independence? There are those who believe that the appointment of the INEC chairman is the first step to asserting the independence of INEC, and they don't think that the president should appoint an INEC chairman.
Well, that is a point of view, and I think the legislators are there, and then there should be an open conversation about this, and I'm sure if we go through that process of public hearings and getting representations from various strata of Nigerian society, and something will come up, and then we are focusing on the issue of independence. I think INEC should be truly independent, not just in name, but also in terms of action. So it's only through the independence, through the electoral, it's only through the legislative process that we can actually handle, such an issue.
Let me take you through some of the proposed amendments currently being considered. And as a former national commissioner, you can say whether or not the commission can handle it. Well, INEC has been in charge of prosecuting electoral offenders. Now, a commission is being proposed. Two sides to it. Some say that we have too many laws that can already enable INEC to prosecute offenders. Some say we need a special commission to ensure this prosecution. And those who argue this will refer to the statistics of convictions that INEC has been able to secure over time and say it's not been fruitful enough, and that's why we need a new commission. What do you say?
I don't think the issue is a new commission. The issue is in actually doing what needs to be done. There should be prompt investigation on the part of the police, and that has not actually been happening. And then we go through the prosecutorial process. We have enough laws, I have enough institutions. We're just trying to multiply, other form of agencies and burdening the governance of the country. Is that what we really truly need to do to be effective? I don't think so. And I think that INEC, I understand that. I believe that it's important that we step up the prosecution of electoral offenders. And INEC I don't think it needs to be particularly unburdened to have this achieved. I think one thing that they've done recently, in the last few years, that they created the department that is responsible for it. It didn't used to be like that. So we have many lawyers in INEC. They can recruit more. Just ensure that the police do their job. If the offenders are being put up to be investigated, and they will take them through the prosecutorial process. I don't think we need to have any more effective on this.
But over time, what have you seen as a former national commissioner? Have you seen a collaboration between INEC and the police to ensure investigation and prosecution?
Well, I think there's less than enough collaboration in this regard. The INEC cannot be. I don't think this is the reason why we need to create another agency, to prosecute electoral offender. But INEC cannot take on the issue of investigating, electoral processing, offenders and then taking them to charge. That is the issue of police. And I know while I was there were many cases that were reported, to the police that never saw the light of the day. So that is what we need to be talking. The police need to rise up to the challenge and do the job that they need to do.
Professor Lucky, do you think that INEC is capable of conducting all the elections in one day?
Yeah, we have seen practices in other countries where it is done in one day. If it can be done in one day and successfully so, larger democracies, I don't see why we cannot do it. There'll be challenges, of course. There are logistic challenges, some of infrastructural challenges, other kind of various form of capacities and so on. Yeah, but I think once the intention is to do that and the law allows it to be done, it certainly can be done because there are best practices around the world that we can learn from. It's something that's not possible in Nigeria if we agree to be.
But over time, there have been these arguments, there have been arguments that INEC has not improved in its processes and elections have not improved over time. In fact, I was speaking to civil society organizations who say that their partners, international donor partners, are almost no longer interested in supporting Nigeria to improve its processes. We find late arrival of materials, late dispatch of materials, and things like that. Even though electoral officials are not at the locations in good time. So when you put all that together, what exactly would you hold on to say that INEC can indeed conduct all the elections in one day if they cannot conduct 50-50 in more than one day?
I'm not advocating for election to be conducted in one day. I'm simply saying that if we decide to go that way, there are enough best practices across the world that we can learn from. And INEC regularly sends observers. And when I was there, I attended the number of international, electoral, events taking place. So this is give us, like a laboratory for us to study and understand how this can be done. But I'm not saying that we should go ahead, and do that in Nigeria. Clearly, there are issues in Nigeria in doing such a thing. And that's, like I mentioned, infrastructure, capacities, IT, and so many other legions of, factors that need to be taken into consideration. I agree that INEC needs to move from INEC 1.0 to INEC 2.0. There's a lot of room for improvement in many areas that will bring the confidence of Nigeria and ensure good, electoral process in Nigeria. The issue of coverage is another thing. INEC is not everywhere. When it comes to particularly the issue of result collation and transmission, it cannot be done live because even the MNO, which are these MTNs and major network operators, they're not everywhere. When I was there, I worked with the NCC, and they will look at the mapping of the signals availability across the country, and we find a significant amount of gaps in it. Who's going to fill that gap? Can we have the MNOs take that up as part of civil responsibility to ensure that these gaps are filled and so to ensure that results are transmitted, quickly? But I'm not calling for electronic voting. That's different. But the issue of transmission of result to particular place, particularly from the polling unit to the next level of collation, is very important. And it should go live that they attempted to do the other time, which failed and left a bad taste in the mouth of Nigeria. There are many things INEC can do to actually improve the electoral process in Nigeria. And clearly working with NCC and the MNOs is one way to go. And
right.
Also, like I said, yes, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that a few other things I think INEC can do, like talking about improvement in the INEC operation. I think the staff should be used, like I said, exclusively in every off-season election, so that you are completely in charge of the personnel in charge of the election. They understand the INEC work. They are staff under your command, under your discipline, and to minimize all these infractions that are clearly, avoidable. I also need to do something about, as a suggestion and recommendation to the incoming INEC, chairman. We also need to do something about the ballot paper. I think there's an unnecessary wastage involved in the use of ballot papers in Nigeria. Well, as much as 40 billion naira will be used just to procure and print and distribute ballot papers in Nigeria, and they are including security around the delivery. Like you mentioned, the ballot papers are not there on time. Some of it is due to security, looking for gunboats, naval boats to escort ballot paper across waters to distant places where polling units are. I'll give you an example. I was in Bayelsa in an election which I managed. During our very first election we did when we got into power. Got into INEC in 2015. We had to go at the Yanagoa port waiting for boats to take ballot papers to distant islands, southern Ijo, which is way in the ocean. Even after contracting these boat owners, they failed to show up, and we couldn't deliver this material on a Friday. Even when we have so you can see the nightmare involved in doing such thing. And I think we need to take a look at the way we overemphasize, ballot papers, security, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of things that could be done. There are best practices. It's about time we demystify, ballot papers, like they do in countries like Sweden, which we have gone, and Norway, which we have gone to study. And we need to implement all these best practices that we see across the world. 2/3 of our ballot papers are almost shredded and burnt. You can imagine burning 2/3 of 40 billion naira, because they were not used. Our election participation is less than 30% on the average in most general elections. And then what happens to the ballot paper? They are shredded and burnt. Money is paid to have them shredded again after having used money to procure them in the first place. So we need to demystify these ballot papers, and we can even see the ballot papers are always customized up to the world level. We can have the ballot paper printed in country. We must not. First of all, we can start by not printing any ballot paper outside of the country and reduce this unnecessary reliance on making them even more secure than our currency notes. That is unnecessary. We should borrow the leaf from Norway. I think ballot papers can actually be printed at the local government level. We use printers, in local government headquarters to do this. Since they are customized to local government level. I can imagine the amount of money that 40 billion naira will go into the economy by using local printers to print this thing. We don't need, ballot papers that are, much more secure than our currency, the naira. All we need is probably like they do in Norway, is the stamp. Bring the ballot. Ballot papers are distributed on the streets in Norway. Political parties have them, and they distribute and encourage people to come and vote. So can you imagine we can do that in Nigeria and save us a lot of money and the wastage that is involved? These are areas I think we can do further improvement. And I also think that the INEC chairman, or any INEC chairman, should carry his colleagues along. These are 12 plus 1 wise men. They should avoid micromanagement and ensure transparency, no secrecy in the dealing of. I think the INEC chairman should ensure there is no secrecy, and he carries his other commissioners, wise men along, ensure that their voices are heard, and there should be no, behind the scene, dealing. And these are experiences that, do occur. If we take care of this kind of, activities or, a recommendation, I'm sure that the new chairman, will succeed. And finally, for me, in terms of recommendation, I think it's about time, and this will also be some credibility to our election, is to prioritize diaspora voting. It's time we do that. We should create diaspora constituencies. Even countries that are less developed than Nigeria, on top of what there in Niger Republic, they do diaspora voting. But why can Nigeria do that? And
it's being considered now, but it's before Parliament, I believe.
Yes, that's always been there. We have had this diaspora group that have always been talking about this, and they were not seeing enough. There's nothing that's not come before Parliament. We're not seeing enough traction. Even the issue of creating the electoral, electoral offenders, tribunal has been there. Even before Jega and since Jega and now, it's still there. Things are always before, but we never see a step forward to get this done.
And also tied to the diaspora voting is early voting. And I want to ask you, as an insider, former insider, do you think that the Commission can handle early voting?
Well, I think we need to not want to do everything that we hear about that is happening in other countries. We need to be a bit careful and look at the context of Nigeria. I wouldn't suggest, there are so many good things that could be done in an electoral process, but I will have to prioritize them. I will not prioritize early voting in an electoral space that is really not robust, that is fraught with the challenges that we have, in Nigeria. I think we need to be a bit, more careful and take one step at a time. I would not say that. That would just be overloading. People are calling for early voting. People are calling for electoral offense commission. People are calling for, electronic voting. I mean, these things are not things that I'm not even sure that the system is robust enough to take on.
So which of them should we prioritize?
I think we prioritize the issue of electoral malpractices offenders should be prosecuted, and I'm not sure that going the way of another commission to do that is the right way to go. I think it can be done. I think they have taken some tentative steps now, and we have seen some signs. We need to expand on the science and the tentative step that INEC has already taken or is already taken.
How about collation and transmission of results?
Say that again.
How about collation and transmission of results?
Collation and transmission, I've already said that I think we need to get the MNOs.
I'm saying, do you think we should prioritize it as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We should prioritize that. In terms of, prioritization, that is different from electronic voting, mind you. I mean, I think the issue of transmission and collation, particularly from the polling units, we have enough experience now. We've seen what happened. So we just need to work out the kinks of that and prioritize it. Because we need people and make sure that the viewing portal should be agile. And it should be promptly uploaded with result sheets from the polling units, minimally. That should be prioritized. There should be no reason why they should not be uploaded immediately. The polling units results are declared. They should be up in the portal so that people can do their independent collation and have the results. That is one way of, ensuring that civil society own, or the Nigerian, people own, the results that they have given to the country. So that needs to be prioritized. That should be number one priority, is to making sure that this declaration and collation from the polling unit to the next level to the portal is prioritized and is giving the necessary attention and skills for people, as well as the IT should be robust enough to do that. But I will not take it all the way down using electronic declaration of results.
Dr. Lekki, let me ask you this question with regard to a constitutional amendment bill currently before Parliament to take away the responsibility of conducting local government elections from the state electoral commissions to INEC. What do you think about that?
I think that should be done. But again, the thing with Nigeria is that we start something and then we run into, stormy weathers, and I'll begin to take a look at it, begin to go back and wonder whether there was any wisdom in the action that we were previously, taking. There is so much issue happening with local government. People think that the governors overburden, the state government overburden, and there's no true democracy happening at the local level where it should actually matter. And if we feel, this is a matter for the parliament, we should collectively own that decision. If we feel that is the way to go, then it should come before the parliament to decide and do that. But I think it can be done, and I think, they are using the INEC register to begin with as the backbone infrastructure for every election in Nigeria. So INEC own the PVC, INEC own the register, INEC own the polling units. They're not different from. So actually, all the infrastructure that is needed to do that at local level is currently it's only owned by the commission. So it's simply about conducting the decision, which is really bringing the people who conduct election, the officials that conduct the election, into the space as far as local government elections concerned. I think it should be the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Okay, so finally, as we wrap this up, I want to ask you with regard to INEC's oversight on political parties, what your experience has been with oversight in political parties, from supervising their party primaries to the delegate list and the substitution of names and all, and what sort of improvement can be done?
I think the legislation on INEC, the INEC bill needs to be strengthened to empower INEC more, because most of the issues we have, our elections always end up in the court. Most of these issues are issues that are traceable to the performance or the behavior of political parties. The biggest headache for INEC are the political parties. And of course, INEC is there to manage the political parties in terms of conducting elections that the political parties have put up, put up candidates. And I think INEC should have a greater say, in some of these things that political parties do. When there is no democracy, internal democracy within the political party processes, particularly in terms of nomination and putting up candidates for election, then things start ending up going to the court. You find that sometimes an election is already taking place and some of the candidates are in court, trying to outdo one another and say you are not the right person to be there. Yes, I agree. I think the issue of political parties, disturbances, it needs to be curtailed, and it needs to be given. It used to be, and it was taken from them, but I think we need to revisit, that. So it's very important.
Dr. Mustapha Lekki, I would like to thank you very much for coming to speak with us on Political Paradigm. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, I've been speaking with Dr. Mustapha Lekki. He is a former INEC National Commissioner. If you'd like to catch this and the previous conversation with the President of the Nigerian Bar Association, simply go to YouTube and search Political Paradigm simply go to channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Terry Kumi. Goodbye.